Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, we'll give another 2 minutes. Madam City Clerk, someone from the public is asking how they get in on the Zoom call. Is it what's on the agenda, correct?
I just added the link to the calendar event as well as the city council page. So everything's there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just turn off my phone and is our city manager here?
He's just entering the meeting now. So we have both subcommittee members. Christine is in and David.
And you, so I think
Wow.
then. Okay, great. It is now 10 a.m. Welcome to West Hollywood City Council Finance and Budget Subcommittee special meeting. It's Friday, April 15th, in case you didn't know, 10 a.m. And I'd like to start with the land acknowledgement. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather and that is currently known as the City of West Hollywood is the occupied, unceded, seized territory of the Gabrieleño Tongva and Gabrieleño Kizh peoples. Okay, and now we will have a call to order. Madam City Clerk.
Both subcommittee members are present, as well as City Manager David Wilson and Budget Officer Christine Seyfried. So we are ready to move forward. Thank you.
Okay, can we please have a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
And I'll second that.
Both subcommittee members have voted to approve the agenda. So we have an agenda.
We
Thank
have
you.
an agenda. That's wonderful. Do we have any public comments at this time?
Mayor, I do not have any members of the public signed up to speak, nor do we have any members of the public in the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then we are going to then move on to new business. 5A, discussion of the fiscal year 2022-23 and 2023-24 budget. And if our staff will go ahead and start their presentation.
Good morning, Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem. I am David Wilson, City Manager, and with me is Christine Seyfried, our Budget Officer. Christine is actually on vacation, so thank you to Christine for joining us during your vacation and continuing to help the city and our budget get completed. So today, focus will be talking about funding priorities. We are very early in the budget process. And so we're looking for input from you as the budget subcommittee on any funding priorities. At this time, we have received some of the requests from the departments and divisions, and I and Christine will be reviewing those requests and making decisions to prepare the city manager recommended budget. And I know there's been a lot of talk in the community and amongst the council about public safety. And there will be a lot of meetings going forward. So I don't think for this particular meeting, we need a lot of direction regarding public safety. We'd rather focus on some of the other funding priorities. That doesn't mean you can't talk about it. I'm just saying we've received a lot of direction and there's going to be a lot of meetings going forward on those discussions. So next slide. So here is the agenda for today. Christine will give a brief overview of the budget. I will talk about operating and capital work plan, and then we'll hear from you on some of your funding priorities. And we'll talk about some of the things that we expect to be in the budget, and hopefully that covers everything and you don't have any additional funding priorities, but we're happy to hear anything that you have and any feedback. So I'll go next slide and turn it over to Christine.
You're on mute.
Thank you. Yes, I was trying to find the unmute button. And now, there we go. Sorry, let's share. Okay, thank you so much. My name is Christine Seyfried. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I wanted to talk to you briefly about our city budget and the components and the elements of the budget. This year, we are doing a 2-year budget cycle. We're looking at fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24. Fiscal year 23 starts on July 1st of 2022, and it runs through June 30th of the following year, 2023. Fiscal year 24 starts on July 1st of 2023 and runs to June 30th of 2024. The budget provides a financial plan for the operation of the city. It is our guiding document when we are looking at what we're going to be doing in the immediate and near term for the city. We look at it both from an operational perspective and from a capital perspective. The budget is composed of several elements, and throughout the document, you can find many useful and interesting forecasts and some fund summaries. These provide insight about the various funding sources that we use to finance and provide funding for our work. And they also provide a summary of the expenditures that are coming from each of our funds. Our major fund is the general fund. This is where the most of our unrestricted revenues are received, and where we do the majority of our operating work. Also in the budget, we have a section of accomplishments, which document the achievements of our departments and divisions from prior year. We set forward our work plans, which outline the departmental goals and the activities that are planned for the next year, and in the case of the 2-year budget, for the next 2 years. And then we also have a capital improvement plan, and that plan looks forward 5 years to guide major capital investments and maintenance across the city. And so our current budget, the FY22 budget, is available online and includes all of these components. And we're working on the FY23, FY24 budget now. Our budget is also guided by our fiscal policy. And these are a couple of highlights from our fiscal policies. The first is that the operating budget must be balanced, and that annual ongoing revenues, such as taxes, are greater than or equal to our annual ongoing expenditures. Another fiscal policy requirement is that our proprietary funds, such as sewer, solid waste, and street maintenance, must be self-supporting, in that the revenues that we receive from those cover all of the expenses. Our fiscal policies require that major capital investments are made using long-term financing, and that comparable increases for revenues and expenditures are balanced. So new spending that's not already in the budget must have new funding, either from revenue growth or from offsets in existing expenditures. So in other words, if we increase our budgets on new programs or expansion of programs, then we are to make sure that those expenditures are balanced with new revenue sources, growth in existing revenue sources, or reductions in other spending. And that's what helps us to maintain a long-term balanced budget. And then finally, we have a policy requirement that adequate reserves must be maintained. And our requirement is that we have a reserve of at least 25% of the general fund budget. And this allows us to weather emergencies. And we had a great example in the last 2 years with the pandemic, in which we used a significant portion of our reserves to cover operating expenditures, to make sure that we were able to continue delivering services to our community. Finally, we maintain a long-range fiscal perspective. We do a 20-year financial forecast, and we are regularly looking ahead to make sure that our operating expenditure growth doesn't outpace our operating revenue growth. Finally, this slide I wanted to show you talks about our general fund and what the revenues, our major revenue sources are in our general fund, as well as a comparison of the last several years of our revenue and expenditures. So our general fund, the majority of our general fund revenue is taxes. Those are sales taxes, property taxes, hotel taxes, business license taxes, and some other smaller sources. Then we also have licenses and permits, charges for services. Those are typically charges for things like recreational services, use of money and property. That includes categories like parking meters and building rents and other, some of our billboards are in that category. Fines and forfeitures, where if we have to apply fines for late payments or for parking meters fall into that category. And then, parking fines fall into that category. And then we have a few miscellaneous other revenues, but the large majority of our revenue sources are taxes. And then looking to the other side of this slide, we have just a presentation of our revenues and expenditures. And revenues are in the blue color and expenditures are in the gray. And as you can see, we've had substantial growth in our revenues over the last 7 years, from about 93 million in FY15 to an expected general fund revenues of 112 million this year. And that's our adjusted mid-year budget. We've also seen our expenditures in the general fund grow substantially over that time, from about 80 million in fiscal year 15 to a projected 115 million this fiscal year. And as you can also see, over the course of the pandemic, FY20, FY21, and FY22, we have had an unbalanced budget where our revenues do not exceed our expenditures. And that's been discussed and approved by the City Council, with the understanding that we are moving back towards a balanced operating budget. So that's a brief summary of our revenues and expenditures from FY15 to FY22 to date. We are working on our FY23 revenue and expenditure estimates, as David mentioned, and those will be driven by our work plan priorities, which I will turn over to David to talk about.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to move your faces so I can see the slide. Okay, so this is some of our operational work plan. These are some of the things that we expect to add during the coming 2-year budget. As Christine mentioned, we had been operating at a deficit the last 2 full fiscal years and projected at a deficit at the current fiscal year. This year, I expect to bring a balanced budget to the City Council, a balanced operating budget. We will probably draw down on reserves for capital projects, but that's typical. So some of the things that we look at as additions to the operating budget. So the Aquatics and Recreation Center, we expect to have it completed this spring and fully operational next fiscal year. So we will have the budget for a full fiscal year. This year we budgeted for a partial fiscal year, knowing it wouldn't be open all year. We're also completing the housing element and general plan updates and implementations, which will take some additional funding. We're planning for a permitting system upgrade. And we received some grant funds for the seismic retrofit program, which will require the city to provide a cost share. I believe, I'm gonna throw out numbers and they're probably wrong, but it's around the $10 million grant, and it's a $2 million that the city has to provide the cost share for that. So we'll need to budget for that. We'll be improving our permitting and plan check services, as well as our code permitting and inspection services. And then we'll also have to budget for capital project management, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, some of the capital projects, and then some economic development studies, such as the economic impact study that we've discussed recently. On the community support side, we will be increasing the Security Ambassador program We've talked about that at a recent council meeting. We will be funding for at least partial year of the WeHo Cares team, which was previously called the Behavioral Crisis Unit. We'll also look at expansion to our social services delivery as well as we go through the RFP process. We will be funding a police feasibility study as part of the upcoming budget, as well as the sheriff's contract audit that was recently discussed. And then adding ALPR cameras. Internal services wise, which now move you all again. So our financial and human resources system, we are looking at doing a system upgrade for those systems. And then our operating contracts, there will be an increase based on the living wage that was recently adopted. And we are currently in contract negotiation with the bargaining units. And so those are things that we look at having increases in the upcoming budget, in addition to our ongoing operations. Next slide. And these are just some of the projects that are on the capital work plan. We do a 2-year operating budget and a 5-year capital work plan. It's projected out for 5 years, and then we adjust it with the next 2-year cycle. So these may be, what you see in the budget may not be exactly what happens a few years down the line, but at least it provides some planning. So we will be working on the Laurel House. I think that's coming up very soon that we'll actually start on that project. As you know, we purchased the log cabin, or are in the process of purchasing that from the city of Beverly Hills, and it will require some ADA improvements on the building itself. We're also in the process of purchasing the Holloway Motel to provide homeless services. In addition, we have the property at 8301 Santa Monica Boulevard, right across the street from City Hall. We are planning for a larger scale project there that will take several years. In the short term, we are looking at improving Coast Playhouse, and that will come to council soon, just to get that building improved and operating as a playhouse, and then it will integrate into the larger project in the future. And then lastly is 8120 Santa Monica. That's the vacant property at the corner of Santa Monica and Crescent Heights, which we're looking at improving as well. And again, that will be over a few years. As far as public parks and public works, there's the Palmer Park Comprehensive Improvement Plan that we'll begin working on. We're looking at bicycle and pedestrian plan implementation, as well as our sewer maintenance and street and sidewalk maintenance. A lot of those are routine maintenance, but they do take a lot of funding and a lot of work, as well as pedestrian safety and neighborhood livability. As for major projects, the design district is the largest project that will be presented in this budget cycle. We have provided some of the funding already in previous budgets, but this budget we will expect to provide the full project amount, which is $35 to $40 million. We also will begin work on the citywide fiber and Wi-Fi infrastructure. That's something that we've been funding over the years as well, and there is a small budget available, but we need more funding and to get the projects actually started. And then lastly, the Metro Rail extension, which is a major project and will take many years, but we are continuing to work towards that. So those are the capital work plan items. And so at this time, we do want to turn it over to the subcommittee for discussion. Again, we've already mentioned a lot of things that we plan on adding to the budget based on conversations with the city council and boards and commissions and community over the last year. But if there are things that we're missing, we certainly want to hear from you all. And as I mentioned earlier, certainly you're welcome to talk about public safety, but that's something that there's going to be a lot more discussions over the next several months.
Okay, would you like to begin,
And just also, sorry, as you begin to, there is a number of staff that's on the call and they are available to answer questions if you do have questions, and depending on what the question is. But we have staff from several of the departments here as well. And now, I'm sorry, Mayor, I will turn it over to you.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question. Thank you. This was really organized and efficient and thorough all at the same time, this report. So I have a question with regard to the security ambassador expansion, and it looks like you included already all the public safety stuff. What I didn't see was that there was a direction to look at the possibility of expanding the PAC West security team to drive in our neighborhoods as a second set of eyes. That was given at the last council meeting. Is that kind of already included? Or, I know we haven't actually, we needed to come back to us and really make a final decision, but since this is our potential things we're looking into, I didn't specifically see a call out for that.
Yeah, so currently our security guard contract is up for renewal, and we're actually in the RFP process and close to selecting a vendor. But yes, that expansion will be included in the upcoming contract. Yeah, and I'll leave it at that for now, but we certainly look at integrating PAC West and some of our other security services throughout the city together.
Thank you so much. I wanted to ask about, right now I know we have for our renters assistance, we have our traditional money that we set aside if you just are having random financial issues, which is $1,000 for one time per year. And then we have the emergency funds that were given and are continuing to be given for those experiencing COVID financial losses for renters. Is there are we going to be looking at funding for when COVID is, we're getting there, and hopefully within a year or so, we can talk about it in the past tense, but for our usual funding, one of the things that I've been requesting is that we look at what our actual average rents are, and perhaps increasing that 1,000 so it actually covers a full month, an average full month's rent rather than a small partial rent, as a way of really truly preventing homelessness, and looking at, does the one time help, or maybe we need to make it 2 times. I think from the pandemic and all the consequences, we may want to just look at it and get a response from our social services staff and what their potential recommendation might be. With respect to the seismic retrofit, thank you. I'm so glad to hear there's going to be some funding coming our way. That's great news. I also, I've heard that we have made a request for appropriations funding in Congress, and I'm hoping we'll get some for the CARES team and the design district as well. Is that correct?
Yes, sorry, I was making sure. Yes, we have made some requests for funding for those programs. We're also in the process of selecting a new lobbyist. Our lobbyist has retired, so we're looking at a state and federal lobbyists that can also seek additional funding for various projects and programs. In addition.
Fantastic. And as we do the West Hollywood Police Department feasibility study, I would recommend that our new lobbyist work with whoever gets chosen to do that study to also look into potential federal funding, if there's any, for community policing programs, any special trainings that perhaps we can get some funding from the federal, state, or even, look at all our resources that may be available. I've heard that potentially there may be some federal funding perhaps available for cities that are looking at community policing and creating their own departments, and see if that actually is a thing.
Okay.
And I think that is all I have so far.
Great, thank you. And you mentioned several of the things that I was going to ask about with the rental assistance, especially, you know, I actually had my conversation with the city manager this morning. We have our call every couple of weeks, and we talked about the fact that we still have budget left over from the rental assistance, the emergency rental assistance, and we'll, you know, want to keep that available, because as we don't know what's going to happen once evictions are allowed again, or, you know, what if people are getting to go back to work again in the same way, where they're making the same money and whatever. So there might be some new challenges that we have. So it's great that we have money that we didn't spend, and we can kind of keep that in reserves to make sure that we have that money for, you know, for anything that might come up in the near future. You know, obviously, you know, we have given you a lot of direction regarding public safety and looking at different possibilities there. So I'm not going to get into that. And you did mention that they will be looking at, you know, the cameras and all of that in the next budget that we'll be looking at. So that's great. I know we have a lot of new things online now. We have ARC, we have the swimming pools, you know, and we have this new park that who knows what exciting things we'll want to do there. So so I'm glad to see we're thinking about that in terms of our budget. And I'm just trying to be mindful of the fact that we do have a lot of new things on board that we have to be able to pay for. And we have given a lot of direction in this last year and a quarter for new programs like the mobile unit. And so, you know, obviously want to make sure that we're able to take care of all that. And you know, I would like to see us be able to bring our reserves back. I know that we only need to have the minimum of 25% of our general fund budget, but and I think we've had 100% in the past. And obviously, you know, when it comes to community resilience, it's important to have as much in the reserves as possible because we don't know what will come next, and you know, if there will be a surge again with regard to the pandemic, and so we want to be prepared for that. And so, you know, I just want to make sure that we are trying to think about how we can bring our reserves back to previous levels. You know, we've talked actually, Mayor Pro Tem and I are you know, are on the homeless subcommittee together, and we've talked about social services with David's team, David and Corey's team, you know, looking at the outreach teams and how we can maybe, you know, leverage some different hours to include weekends and evenings, weekday evenings, so that our community feels like there's more availability when they call to say, you know, we need outreach here, and it'll all be, you know, in a sense, a pilot. We'll just have to see how that works. The only other thing I was going to mention, and I know we have a lot of properties that we're looking at to develop, and that's very exciting, especially the Holloway, and I imagine we'll be starting with community outreach on the Crescent Heights project as well. And the only other thing I wanted to add was that I know there have been requests from arts to possibly increase budgeting for grant programs. So that's just something I'd like us to look at and see if that's doable for this next fiscal year, and if not this next fiscal year, then the year after that. You know, I think one thing that sets us apart from a lot of cities is the fact that we do prioritize our arts and cultural programs. And, that's something that brings people to the city, which means then they're going to go to dinner afterwards and spend some more money here. So I think that's an investment for us that, hopefully we get something out of it as well by having people come to our city and then spend money on our businesses. So those are my thoughts, and I really appreciate the presentation. And I know that we have, as a council, have brought a lot of new projects to staff, and so I'm not looking to add more projects at this moment. And be able to fund those projects and see if we can put a little bit away for our reserves to rebuild our reserves.
Mayor, just a couple of follow-up comments from you. Thank you. And I am in agreement with you with regard to arts as well. I do believe as a creative city, we've always made that a priority, and living up to that is really important. Sometimes arts is kind of looked at secondarily, whereas there's arts contributes so much to the well-being of community as well as bringing tourism, and it's a really underappreciated. So I'm glad that as a city we have appreciated the arts and will continue to. Since you talked about the outreach teams, Mayor, it reminded me to ask another direction that was given at our last meeting was looking at potentially increasing and getting another MIT team from Step Up. And I want to make sure that's also in our priorities, because the feedback we got during our public safety budget was that they're effective and helpful and available now as we continue to build the WeHo Cares team, since that's going to be a little while. Those are my follow-up comments.
That's great. Thank you so much. So if those are the comments from the subcommittee, and now we move to comments from staff.
So just regarding the arts, so we'll definitely look at that. We do look at arts as an economic development tool, and that's why we put it back with Economic Development Department. We also have the arts and advertising program, so we'll be looking at digital art as well, and the funding that's coming in from the billboards may help in expanding some of the arts grants and things as well. So we'll look at that, as well as the MIT team and the other things you all have mentioned. I think the other thing we wanted to do is provide the budget schedule going forward. And so I will turn it over to Christine to do that.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem. We appreciate your comments and your priorities. In terms of our next steps, we will be hosting another budget subcommittee meeting in mid-May. And at that time, we intend to present a more comprehensive picture of the FY22 and FY23 budget with some numbers attached to the various work plan items. And it's our intention at that time, as David mentioned, to be bringing a balanced operating budget to you. Then in early June, we will file an item for the City Council, receive and file of the budget. And then later in June, there will be a discussion and adoption item. The budget will, once adopted, the budget is implemented and goes into effect on July 1st. So that's our short-term timeframe in case you have any questions about that. And with that, I think we are complete with our presentation, and would be happy to take any additional questions or if there is any public comment.
Great. Mayor Pro Tem, any additional comments?
No, I really appreciate this discussion, Mayor and staff, and Christine and David, thank you. This was perfect presentation. I want to say to the mayor and the rest of the Jewish community, I hope you have a joyous Passover. And also it happens to be Good Friday as well. So wishing a blessed Good Friday to all our Christian community.
Thank you very much. And Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comments?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have anyone signed up to speak, but I do see a couple of members of the public in the meeting. So if you wish to provide public comment, please use the raise hand feature or press *6 to unmute yourself. Someone has raised their hand. Go ahead and unmute yourself if you would like and turn on your camera, and you will have 2 minutes.
I see one hand.
Yeah. Trying to get them. Go ahead.
I can't do it.
We hear you.
Hello.
Hi, Yola. Hi, Yola.
Hi. How are you? Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem and City Manager and City Clerk and so on. First of all, let me say happy holidays to each and every one of you. I am just now tuning in due to scheduling personally, and I would like an opportunity to speak about the budget for public safety. Is that possible at this time?
Yes.
Sure, Yola.
Okay. It's very important to me personally. I'm speaking for myself this morning. To request we do not in any way cut the public safety budget for law enforcement. If anything, I'm requesting that we add money to that. For the reason that follows, I'd like to see more, quote, boots on the ground, if you will, and possibly even a substation on the east side. It takes so long with the traffic, the buses, the delivery people and everything for officers to get to this side of town if there would be an emergency. So that would be the reason. Also, to let our officers become more personally familiar with the businesses, the residents, and the people of all ages and all designs. I think community policing will be part of our answer in the future. So I'm asking you to consider this. Thank you.
Thank you, Yola.
Thank you, Yola. Are there any other members of the public who would like to provide comment? If so, press *6 or use the raise hand feature. Okay, Mayor, I don't see anyone.
Great. And I did get one request that we have our titles, including our staff, have titles next to names so that people know, what you do, even though we know, but not everyone does. So perhaps City Manager, you can put City Manager after your name, and Christine, your title, and anyone, and Melissa, that would be great. And that's all I got. So if there's nothing else, then I think that this meeting can be adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.